Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room live stream with myself, Dan, Stu, and Kev. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this Monday evening. Lots of news to get through today, namely a couple of bits about Jorrel Hato from Ajax. We also have some bits surrounding a bit of a discussion on the Salah versus Henry debate. I'm going to be very biased on that because I'm an Irishman and we don't like Theirry Henry for no particular reason whatsoever. We're going to have a bit of a chat about Stefan Bajcetic as well and sort of see where everybody's heads are at in relation to him. Hasn't had really much of a loan spell at RB Salzburg. I think the idea was to send him over there with Pep Linders, but he has shown himself to be such a dog-awful manager that he has basically gotten himself the sack before Jurgen Klopp would have had to have done it. And now Bajcetic hasn't started in any of the last 9 games that Salzburg have played. And I think he's averaging maybe about 40 minutes a game, which really isn't what you want from a guy that's already missed a year of development from his the injuries that occurred. We'll then also talk about Gakpo and his conversation with the man upstairs about what team he should join and what the pastor had said to him, which I think is quite funny. Gakpo being a religious man that he is. But we will get into everything. And before we do so, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos as well, so that you never miss out. Make sure to get your thoughts into the comments as well, and we'll address any that come up that are a bit interesting, and we'll throw them to the panel. But first of all, Kev, I'll throw the first topic out to you. Jorrel Hato was at Anfield during the weekend, and all of us were falling over each other in the group chat, being like, "Oh my God, he's coming! Oh my God, he's coming here!" And I know you weren't. The lesser-minded of us, shall we describe it as? That's basically it of what it was. Everybody was like, "Oh, he's definitely coming. He's definitely there." Now, more level-headed of us were probably saying it's one of two things: either he's going to be a Liverpool player by the end of the week, or he's there on a wee bit of a holiday. And it turned out to be the latter. Now, unfortunately, the likes of Dave O'Cop, the silly prick that he is, decided to say that he was being moved in January, only for the Telegraf to come out and say that he's not moving anywhere in January. It might be summer. Liverpool and Real Madrid are two clubs that are monitoring him. Is he a player that you could see coming in and replacing two of your favourite players in Kostas Tsimikas and Andy Robertson?
I would keep him hostage till the end of the transfer window and get him to sign and send the other two back, as one as Jorrel and the other one as Hato, and then give them back to Ajax in that way. For me personally, it would be nice if we do sign. I've said you sign someone like that, it sends a message out that we are identifying a weakness and we are addressing it as soon as possible, and it just gives everyone a bit of a kidney blow. Whether we do that, whether we don't, I don't know. But his face was in awe when he saw Virgil van Dijk, so as it would be, I think I would be as well. But he's one of many players. What I want him to be is something that fits what Slot wants, and if it does, then that's what I want. I like the fact that he's worked with I think Heitinger was at the academy when he was given play of the academy in the under-18s. You've also got a good relationship between the sporting director at Ajax, who's worked with Arne Slot previously. So there's a good reason why there would be kind of makes sense. But then it goes down the route of do we start getting too many Dutch players in and etc. and all like that. But I'm not really bothered about that. As long as he fits what Arnie wants, then I'm quite happy. But no, he's one of many that are on the list, if I'm being honest. And as I say, he's 18. He's a raw talent, and what I've seen of him. But there looks as though there could be a potential of a great player in him. So let's just wait and see.
Something that you said they're getting too many Dutch players. Do you remember when Rafa Benitez came in and all of a sudden we had a slew of Spanish players coming in? Do you think it'll be something similar? Like, obviously, sometimes a manager likes his own kinsmen to a degrry that he can really relay stuff to them an awful lot quicker and get his point across a bit quicker.
At first we all didn't know who Alonso was, and then you see who Alonso was, who we brought in. So there are going to be a few gems that they may know. Heitinger will know quite a few from the Ajax, for his time at Ajax. So hopefully that will just fell into our team. It was a bit like Wenger at Arsenal with the French players that came through. You know what I mean? He was always linked to the talented young players. We thought we had the best when, signing it was a Pongol and Latalik, and he was nowhere near the levels. There you go.
Bruno Giroux, the next
Bruno Giroux, Jean-Michel Ferry, who played the least minutes of anyone. So there is a reliance and there is a bit of but if you're going to an academy that is as well established as what Ajax is, you're bound to pick one or two gems up along the way. So no, it kind of makes sense, to be honest. The good thing is he's not doing what he did 30 miles down the road and start picking players up from their old club for ridiculous amounts of money and nowhere to be seen, talentless. Yeah. So it can go one of the two ways, but no, it kind of makes sense, to be honest.
Yeah. And Stu, one of the questions that came in here from Aidan is, I'll pull it up again. Would Hato be a left back replacement or a centre back replacement, or is it a little from column A and a little from column B? Do you see him being the stopgap at left back possibly, and the more prolonged future at the left centre back role with Konate there as the right centre back, and then Jorrel Kwanzaa coming through as well at a certain point too?
I think that's probably a fair assumption. Hato, like Kev said, he's very young, still very raw, but is undoubtedly one of the biggest left-sided defenders, like the biggest talents in Europe at this stage of his career. You just got to be careful with it. As we've been stung in the past. I had another name pop in my head, Gregory Vignal. He was. There you go. We want basically what we are looking for. We are looking for another Robertson, where we get a world-class left back for £8 million, and he does the business for us all the way through. Now, will Hato fill in that left back spot? I don't think so. He's not built to be a wing back, so to speak. He is a left-sided defender. So, as a long-term replacement, yeah, definitely, I can see him. He's already said as well. I'm sure I saw a quote of him saying that he got really starstruck when he met Van Dijk in the internationals on the last break, which again is understandable. But when you think about it, Hato is only a kid, and he's playing alongside with his idol. So I can understand that from that perspective. That may also have a little bit of sway for us as well. So I'm all for it personally. I think as a long-term investment, and I've been looking at the data thingy. The triangle graphs at the moment. Weirdly enough, the biggest comparison we could have is Anthony Robinson over here in the Premier League. That's who he is closest resemblance is in the Premier League, which, to be fair, is not a bad resemblance.
Not at all.
It's and especially for an 18-year-old to have a similar sort of graph to Anthony Robinson being in the Premier League, that's not bad at all. So it won't happen this month. I'm convinced of that. I don't think we're getting anything this month, sadly. But again, I'm going to reiterate, they're going to have to pull us socks up and fingers out of hoops come summertime, because they're going to have to pull an absolutely blinding summer transfer window. But will Hato be part of that? I hope so.
Yeah. It is. The way that I look at it at the moment, and I know where your worry is coming from, Stu, with regards to it, the old moniker that all the FSG out crowd use to beat FSG with the stick they use to beat the club with is they're only happy with top four. They're not ambitious enough to go and push for a Premier League. Okay. And then with that logic, you can turn around and say, okay, well, if we lose all three players, they're going to go out and spend a couple of $100 million in the summer to make sure that they can still secure top four. So, or they're going to pay all three of the lads so that it helps them secure top four. It's one of the two. And I've said that to many people who are properly FSG out on Twitter, and they just have no response to it, because it's kind of like, okay, well, by your logic, they're either going to pay for the lads so it secures top four, or they're going to let them go and spend a bomb on a load of new players so it secures top four. So which one do you want? Which one are you happy with? And nobody can give me an answer on it, which is hilarious. Dan, on the topic of money, one of the questions that went over in the group chat for ages was the price that Jorrel Hato would take.
I knew you'd ask me this.
coming in. Well, it was myself and yourself and Charlie that were really, when I say going at it, but more so the discussion going back and forth over how the model is built, how we are currently at the moment with how the team is, what we've done in the past, what Michael Edwards has done in the past, going off past experiences. An 18-year-old, Charlie mentioned that he'd go for about 80 million euros. You said bollocks, and I probably agreed to a sense. I don't see that happening personally, purely because he's 18, he has a lot to prove, and they're also not selling to United for one. And if he was that price, we would move on very swiftly. But with regards to the pricing of him, is there, I don't know if you said it in the chat earlier today, you might have, but is there a limit of what you would go for considering this market currently at the moment if you see the likes of Prem proven 50 games in the Premier League for the likes of Milos Kerkez, who is being touted at about 40 to 50 million pound, which would be about 50 to 60 million euro. And now you look at an 18-year-old prospect, if you want to call him that, coming from Ajax, knowing full well that the likes of Gravenberch left Ajax for 18.5 million to go to Bayern before coming to us for double that, essentially. Is there a level that you wouldn't go over with regards to Hato if it was on the table?
It's not so much when I make these opinions on things. I work in an industry where it comes to when you purchase things, you have to go off history of what things have sold for, because that's where everything goes. That's how you work out the value of something, is to go out there and investigate, well, what is the previous sales? We look at Ajax's sales. Everyone thinks Ajax are brilliant at selling footballers. In fact, really, they're not. They're relatively okay at selling footballers, but the fees are generally quite modest. There's only 3 standout signings that have ever happened, and that is Matthias de Ligt, Frenkie de Jong, who happened in one season when money went crazy in 2019 and 2020. And these were at the time deemed as perhaps generational footballers, and the two of them have gone on to have relatively mixed careers, but have played at top clubs throughout their career. You then look at, of course, the Antony signing, which we can all laugh at, which was a record sale for them. And for those who don't know, I'm sure many people do know the story of it, is that they were quoted a fee of around 45 million euros by a certain date. I think it was the end of July or something around there. Anything after that, the fee went to 90 million euros. And for some reason, Man United, in their infinite wisdom, dilly-dallied around and eventually went on pay for that price for him. And of course, he turned out to be terrible. I could have told you he was going to be terrible because the numbers weren't very good, even in the Eredivisie, playing for Ajax. So it was a poor signing from the very outset. So I look at what Liverpool's history have done. Liverpool's only bought 2 right-backs since Andy Robertson. One of them is Andy Robertson. We've only ever paid more than 15 million euros for a right back, and that was Kostas Tsimikas.
Left back.
It's not a bit. So, of course, you can come back to me and say, "Well, we've not needed one," and that's right. That's absolutely correct. We haven't needed to bring one in. We only needed a backup, and we brought in a relatively suitable backup for what you need them to be, because everyone knows left backs aren't really footballers. They're just people who make up positions on a pitch. So, my concern is that we're talking about Jorrel Hato, who's 18 years of age. Brilliant, loads of potential. I appreciate all that, but there's only a value so far where potential goes. If we're talking 80 million euros, he has to be the next Cafu or Roberto Carlos. It has to be. They can't possibly be anything less. He'd have to land, assist 15, get 5 goals, and probably get 7 Man of the Match awards in a season just to be deemed as, well, that's his value. That's where he's worth the price. So for a player of his age coming from them, I would be anything more than 30 million euros would probably be overpaying. And that's just where he's based on it. He has got a very limited amount of football he's played. He just about hits Liverpool's 150 game marker that they like to use to be able to say that this is kind of what they are. This is the information we can receive from them. It's not just like a purple patch where someone's brilliant for, say, 60 games and you think, wow, what an incredible footballer, and then all of a sudden they drop off. They like to have more information. More information means you can make better decisions. I also don't agree with the quoted price of Milos Kerkez, because it's also important to understand who you're buying from. At one point, we were a club just like, I would say, I'm not Bournemouth, but like Ajax. We were a good team, but we weren't the best. We weren't tier 1. We were the team who people come to make a name for themselves, and then they went off to Barcelona. Luis Suarez, Javier Mascherano, Xabi Alonso, the list goes on and on and on. When you're purchasing from a team like Ajax, or when you're purchasing from a team like Bournemouth, the price that can be commanded is much lower when a club like Liverpool comes knocking. The reasons being is we can offer so much more as a buying club to a player than the club that was selling them from. They can't offer the same wages. They can't offer the same football. They can't offer the chances of winning, the things that we're winning. So for me, it's a football position for us that we need to improve. We absolutely need a new left back, but we don't need to buy the best in the world of that. That's where my opinion sits. They need to be someone who's able to positively affect this football team, not give away goals, and help create going forward. But you don't win a league by going out there and spending all of your budget on a left back. It's just not the right place. And when you sold players like Mohamed Kudus for 43 million euros and he's an attacker, I just don't see, and he was 23 when he moved, by the way. I just don't understand how anyone can justify to me that he should be the same price as, say, Mohamed Kudus 5 years younger.
Yeah, no, I agree, because as you said, history of what they've sold, history of what we've bought, history of what they've sold overall, barring obviously the United fuck-ups, and how like Mohamed Kudus went to West Ham and all of a sudden now is an £85 million release clause on him. And I have no clue how anybody would pay that person. I don't have a clue how anybody would pay that. But I don't know how you think about that, considering he's about to sign his extension with Bayern, but fair enough. Stig, I don't see that happening at all. He's on more money than Virgil is at the moment, and if you think we're paying that for him, that's not a hope of that. But we're going to move on. We'll move on now to the next topic that we have on. But before we do so, I want to ask everybody, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so you never miss out as well. We'll be live again tomorrow with our pre-game stream from 7:30 p.m. UK time. And then we will be live then after the game of the Champions League game on Wednesday at 10 p.m. in the evening. And we'll also have our Star Strikes and Anfield night stream on tomorrow evening as well for all of our American watchers too. But we'll move on now to will we do the Salah debate now, or will we wait till the we'll kind of wait till the end for that one, because there's no point in, because I think that one could get a bit heated, because I'm definitely going to call Henry a frog eating dickhead. But if for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, just look up Henry handball and that's all you'll need to see. I was more so mad at the FAI for what they did after.
He's the Irish Maradona.
Oh. And do you want to know what was pure justice? The French team went to I think it was the World Cup or the Euros, whatever tournament it was. They went to the tournament, completely imploded, and finished last in their group. And I was like, you fuckers. They were pricks. I hated them. But anyways, still do. France only exists so that you can drive to better countries. That's my thoughts on it. That's literally my thought.
Oh, God.
Shots fired.
France is a beautiful country. It's just a shame about the French people. And Konate is an honorary scouser, so I don't think he counts. But yeah, I don't like the French. Anyways, Stefan Bajcetic, currently at the moment, has really not sort of, I don't want to say not kicked on, because clearly there's bags and bags and bags of talent there, and he's clearly a very, very good footballer. Stu, with his loan spell over in Steven is demonetized in France, they don't have the money to pay us. But with Stefan Bajcetic and his minutes played with RB Salzburg at the minute, it seemed like it was a bit of a maturing year for him. Yeah. To go there under Pep, somebody that we know that's close to the club, but that all kind of went tits up when Pep just shat the bed with the club and really showed his lack of managerial skill with Salzburg, and they have an awful lot of work to do, and he's just really not. And the way that it's looked at, the new manager now is looking at him like, you're not going to be here in 6 months, so why am I going to bother playing you when I can develop the talent that is going to be here beyond this summer? Which when you look at it from a Salzburg point of view, it's completely fair. But we need to now make a decision with Stefan Bajcetic. How would you feel about him coming back, or do you think he still needs the remainder of a season at a loan spell elsewhere? I know Real Betis were looking at him as well. And a couple of Spanish clubs as well, like Las Palmas from Mallorca, I think was another one.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people, when obviously Pep Linders left and obviously took the Salzburg job, I looked at it and I thought, okay, that's actually not a bad position for him. And then obviously he went in for Bobby Clark, signed him permanently, and then went in for Badge, got him on loan. And I thought, actually, you know what? This could be the perfect recipe to kickstart his career again, because that was a horrendous injury that he had. And he obviously needs the game time again to build his level back up. But it's just one of those things that has completely and utterly backfired. And I don't think it's through any fault of his own as such. More probably on how Pep Linders managed Salzburg and the position that they find themselves in. But would I bring Badge back to the club for the rest of the season? No, he still needs the game time. Because the game time he was getting at Salzburg, it wasn't consistent enough. I don't think he actually completed a full 90 minutes his entire time there. I think maybe one full 90 minutes, and that is it. I know he had a bit of an injury as well, but all the sort of the bit part minutes, you're not going to learn a lot from that. He needs the consistent minutes. So if he goes out on loan for the rest of the season out to Spain, I think that would be perfect for him, especially for a mid-table to lower table team. He gets some decent experience there. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think he needs the consistent minutes.
He does. Kev, on about consistent minutes, he's had 18 appearances with Salzburg currently at the moment, 12 in the league, 5 in the Champions League, and 1 in the OFB Cup. And he's played a grand total of 890 minutes. That's not what you want from your 20-year-old, supposed to be talisman, up-and-coming midfielder, when you have the likes of James McConnell, Trey Neone, you had Rio and I'm after butchering that surname. You had the likes of Rio. I let you. My furniture started moving around my room after you said that. But with how we currently have young players coming through, and with the FA Cup games and how we're getting those draws, would it be better to bring him back and have him in a sort of a backup role to the likes of Gravenberch to allow him to have rest, maybe take over from Morton, who clearly wants to go, and you cement then Endo and Bajcetic as the 2 backup CDMs and build him into the squad then with how everything progresses that way? Or is it a spell of just he needs an attitude adjustment, because obviously reports came from Austria that he was late to training, he was just not having a great attitude, was getting fined by the club? Is it a situation that it's not that he's not a good enough player, it's just that maybe he needs to grow up a little bit?
There's an element of that what you're saying is correct. I think with hindsight, he probably would have loved to have stayed at the club with how it's gone. I think it's been a debacle at the club. I think there's a lot of things going on at Salzburg that weren't actually you could see with how they did with last season. It's only this season that you're seeing how bad things are at that club and how bad this has actually been for them going away. I think it's ideal for him to stay on loan. I don't think there's any possibility of him coming back. I just think I think he just needs the minutes, as Stu quite rightly says, and I think it'll benefit him more by going to a better league in La Liga than actually where he currently was. So I think it will only embed him better if he does. He needs these minutes, and I'd even be looking, seeing how he comes back in pre-season, and probably the first half of the next season he goes out on loan as well. I think at some point, it's hard for him. He's been out for 15 months, and it's one of them with me. It's a tough decision what you do with Badge, because I think we saw the talent before he got injured, but with that amount of months that he's been away and how bad this loan's gone, I don't think it's right for him to come into come back, because I don't think he'll get the minutes he's required. I think he'll be further down the pecking order than what he already is, and I just think it will enable him to go out, mature, possibly if that's required, and go to a club where we can guarantee him his minutes. And once we can do that and establish that, we see how well that's gone. And if we see any movement in the right direction, then we bring him back for pre-season, see how it goes. But if those numbers are still falling short, then he needs to go out on loan again at the start of next season, and maybe a discussion then. That's the way I'd play it. But we'll see what happens. But I do hope generally the next one, that if he does go out on loan, is he gets the moments he needs, because he needs to build his confidence back again. He needs to get back to the level he was, because we all loved him, and it's a shame that what's happened to him. And I'm with this loan that he's on at the minute. But no, I'd be happy for him to go back on loan somewhere else, as on the proviso and a caveat that he gets the minutes that he needs.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. Even like it's minutes. He needs minutes. He's already lost a year of development straight away from the injury, and minutes is what he needs. Dan, we've mentioned obviously the Austrian league. We've mentioned the likes of La Liga. Would you keep him in house and send him to a championship team? Possibly, because we've seen how that's worked for Ben Doak. We've seen how that's worked for Tyler Morton last season. We've seen how it worked for Fabio Carvalho last season. Seen how it worked how it's currently working for both Doak and Kumas. And also there's obviously the likes of the Scottish League. I think Owen Beck is up there currently at the moment. We have a couple of guys all over the place at the minute as well. All sort of kept within arm's reach is probably the best way to put it, rather than firing him all the way over to Spain or all the way over to Austria or Germany. But on the flip side of that, him being Spanish, do you think he'd be able to gel better in a Spanish environment, surrounded by Spanish coaching staff, players, culture and everything like that, and maybe possibly settle a little bit easier and gain that confidence back quicker?
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent, isn't it? I mean, we've never loaned players to Salzburg before. We have a history of loading players to certain places because we trust them and they play a style of football that suits our players and they can learn, and we trust their coaches and their staff to look after them in the right way and not to overplay them and all that good stuff. There's a lot about Stefan that we don't know, do we? I mean, I joke and say he had a year gap, a year's gap, and he went there and got into reggae and, found himself, and he's now involved in doing mushrooms. I mean, he had a year out where he was injured. We don't know why. Has he grown? What is it? It's a difficult situation, but the club clearly back what they have because they sent him out on a loan. It's not quite worked because Pep's worked out that being a coach is a lot different than being obviously the first assistant. Is a little bit different, isn't it? So my question would be is what are the club, are they happy with the minutes he's received based on his injury last season? That needs to be a question, because there could well be a case of that the club don't want him playing too much anyway this season. They just want him going out there and getting some minutes and getting back into it for whatever reason, and there's a bit of supposition around that one. If though the club, they have shown many, many times that they will remove a player from a loan if it's wrong. They'll recall them. If it's not working, they will recall them. And they haven't recalled him yet. And I think they normally would have acted quite quickly, and they have done before with other players. Stefan, I think, could well have a future here at Liverpool. I don't think he would have a future, like if people say, "Oh, recall him and have him as part of our team." He's not ready for that, not anywhere close. I think Slot's team, when it comes to being match ready, expect an incredibly high ceiling. And we've seen that with players like Chiesa, we've seen that with players like Elliott, who just can't get on the pitch, and they're only just now over halfway through the season getting some minutes, so it just wouldn't work playing for us. If there is a club who we trust, who has a need for a player like Stefan, who can get him in their team the way that we want him to, then you'd want him at the best possible place. And if because Pep's not there anymore and there's another club who we think we can trust better with him, then yeah, I think we should maybe move him on if the position's right for him. There's just a lot about him that we don't really know. I'd like to see him kick on. I really liked what we saw, like Kev said, I really liked what we saw when he came through. We probably overplayed him a little bit too much in that season, and that was probably because of where we were at the time. We just needed bodies, we needed legs, and and it worked. He scored some important goals and was really involved and did a lot of really nice stuff. So it can be difficult as well for being a young man away from home, on a loan. And, he's saying about he's turned up late for training and stuff. It's got to remember these are still kids, aren't they? They're professional footballers on the TV, but they still go out there and do some stupid stuff when they haven't got people keeping them in check, especially when they're on loan. It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to be here at the end of the season. So it can be a bit of a question of that. But yeah, I'd like to see Stefan going somewhere where he's getting the right minutes. And if the club aren't happy with the minutes he's getting at Salzburg, then I think they'll move him on somewhere where he will get them, whether that's in Spain or not. The one that really concerned me was at the start of the season when Barcelona was saying about loaning him because he'd never come back.
Yeah. That was one that I was worried about. Send Baj to Ajax and, well, that's a good one. Just looking at the numbers of it here, I'm going to see if I can share this. And I don't even think I need to share. I'll just say them out. Looking at the numbers that he has currently, this is just in the Champions League alone so far this season with his scouting report. This is against all midfielders. He's in the 83rd percentile for shot creating actions. He's in the 85th percentile for the amount of passes completed. Very shockingly, only in the 38th percentile for the completion percentage. He's in the 80th percentile for take-ons attempted. Carter's going to love that. And on the defensive side of the ball, he's quite good as well. Just looking at the numbers here, the passing types and the goal and shot creations, and even in possession, he's fantastic. His touches in his defensive penalty area, defensive third, mid third, the attack and the attacking third. His take-ons attempted and successful. His carries, his carrying distance, his passes received. It all seems to. What's the word I'm looking for? It seems if you were to look at it in possibly a summary that he's very good on the ball, he's very good in possession. He doesn't lose the ball all that often. He's passing the ball progressively and creating chances. If I told you that without saying it was Stefan Bajcetic, you'd say that that's very akin to what Ryan Gravenberch and Alexi McAllister are currently doing at the moment. So maybe the club are happy with what he's doing there. However, and as Dan mentioned, with the injury, slowly building back up. He's 20, he's not 25. This kid has another 10, 15 years in him maybe. You don't want to turn him into the likes of Gavi or Balde at Barcelona, who just have, or Pedri as well, who have leg injuries left, right, and centre all over, whether it's an Achilles or whether it's ACLs or MCLs. This is something you obviously don't want to rush. And I think, especially under Slot now, with how we've seen how he deals with injuries, the Konate one aside, because I think that was Konate coming back early by himself, not the team pushing him back early. We deal with it in such a way, as Dan mentioned, that you're not in the squad unless you are as close to 100% as you possibly can be. And I think a lot of us are conditioned to previously with Jurgen Klopp. It's the second you hit your 80% ready, you get thrown back in, which is why we've seen so much re-injuries and why the likes of Thiago was a failed signing for us, in my own personal opinion. Brilliant on the ball, magician with the ball, but can do fuck all about it if he sat in the rehab table 90% of the time, unfortunately. I just feel that was a bit of a missed signing myself personally. Baj brought in as a centre-back originally and not a DM as well, so I have to remember that. He can play both, and that's the great thing about it. Very similar to Endo in that Endo is a centre-back and then a DM and then a centre-back and then a DM and done it that way. But we are going to...
Sorry, Stephen, just with Derek's comment there. A lot of young centre-backs are big enough to play at the youth level as centre-back and then soon realise that being a centre-back in the Premier League, you just don't fill out. Badge could never be a centre-back for this club. He's far too small, he's far too slim. He just doesn't have the frame, but perhaps when he was 16, 17, he's going to be the biggest lad out of the skinny lads. But yeah, just one last thing is also as well, this manager doesn't owe anybody anything. There's no sort of loyalties to these people, these players. He doesn't know them. So it's not like a case of when, for example, obviously we all want to see Elliott play more minutes. He doesn't owe Slot anything. Slot owes Elliott nothing. He will expect to see it on that training pitch and him to meet the level of the players currently playing. So I don't think there's a case of sort of, he needs a game or he deserves a game. I think it's more of a case of you deserve a game if you're the best player. I think that's kind of where it is right now. It's like, if you're the one who's delivering for me, you're the one who's out there in training, delivering at the highest level, I'm not going to drop X player just to let you have a game, because that's not what we do here. This is a case of we put our best players on the pitch, and so far that's why we're in everything and the top of everything. That's kind of how I see it at the moment.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. Very similar to or echoes the statement that Ruben Amorim came out with, and basically said he'd start the goalkeeper coach over Rashford currently at the minute, which I thought was hilarious. But don't tell Carter that, because Carter might still want Marcus Rashford. But anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to move on now to one of the last topics of today. But make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out as well. We'll be live again tomorrow from 7:30 p.m. with our Star Stripes and Anfield Nights stream later that evening. And then we'll have our post-game stream at 10 p.m. on Wednesday. So make sure you're around for that. British Standard Time for that, 10 p.m. But Cody Gakpo, speaking of Man United and players that they were very close to signing that we nabbed off the plane and diverted it to Blackpool, how it's looking to land into Manchester Airport and seeing Old Trafford as he flies in, all of a sudden to be flying over it and seeing the Eiffel Tower from Wish in Blackpool. But Cody Gakpo this season has really sort of made that left wing position his own. He's really come into his own, and lo and behold, shock, you play a left winger at left wing and he comes alive. Kev, how impressed have you been with him so far this season, first of all? And secondly, when he arrived and he kind of had that bit of an electric start and then a bit of a fall off season after that, are you surprised with this bounce back, or did you expect it now that he's been played in his natural position?
I fully expected it. You looked at where we played United in that 7-0 win, and he was playing on that left wing. And you saw how phenomenal he is and how he loves to do what Mo does, but on the other side, cut in and hit it with his favourite foot. And the goals he scores are not, you know what I mean? He does it all the time. And you only have to look at how he plays for Holland, and you see how good he is and versatile he is in those front three positions. You play him in the right position, you get the play that you get. The issue we had last season was he was playing in midfield, and that's not Cody's game whatsoever. And naturally, we've asked more of him, like we have done in previous seasons with other players, and we don't seem to be getting the best out of them and utilise them in the right way. But it's a simple thing: play him in the right position, and boy, he will do what he is. He's on course already. He's already scored, I think, 14 goals and 5 assists in all his.
He's had 19 goal contributions this season. Yeah,
he's on for at least 20 and a 10 goal and 10 assists this season already. That's phenomenal. That's like similar to what Mane was producing, and that's this is why I'm so really made up that he is taking it and he is playing out of his skin for us at the minute. Yeah, I get at times it does look as though, you know, he's not interested, but he's fantastic. He's a phenomenal player. I witnessed this, and I am made up that what's happening is actually happening to this for the kid, because, you know, he came in, he had a bit of a peak, like a few of them did, and then it backed off. But if you look at it in isolation, he's playing out of position. And he was overthinking things. If you listen to his interview he has at the end of last season or the season before, where he's talking with Klopp and that, and he's talking about his mental attitude and how he was took aside and going, look, I just want you to do what you're doing. And you saw elements in certain games. You saw a little bit of I like that. But then a lot of the time, a lot of people getting on his back. That wasn't his fault. That was because he was asked to play in those positions. Now you're seeing a player who's absolutely amazing at the minute, and I'm made up. Every time he plays, I expect him to score, and he's phenomenal for us. And I love the fact that, you know, even getting in at the back post, because, you know, how many times have we missed that? His second goal, I absolutely adored last thing. The last time I've seen a forward in a position to head the ball in that position and just thump it where it needs to go instead of straight at the bloody keeper, it's unbelievable how he does that. And his movement in the front line as well is very good as well. He doesn't naturally stay on there. He'll move into the centre forward position, which he did at times on Saturday. He can alter that, and you've got a player who can do that. He's so versatile and so flexible in those forward positions. you utilise them in as much as what we have done. And honestly, we've got a player on our hands. I'm just made up. He's actually playing in that position where he is, and it keeps competition on Diaz as well. Diaz has got to keep his numbers up as well, and that's what you want. You want those little kind of competition in there as well. So it keeps them motivated as well. And when you've got a forward six, you've got to keep them happy, and that's all you can do. Confidence is absolutely abundance with Gakpo at the minute, and I'm expecting I am expecting 20 goals this season and 10 assists, because he can do it, and even more.
Yeah, and that would be considered a career year for some people, and he's just so nonchalantly doing it, which is absolutely madness as well. And as you say, Kev, like, it's not as if he's like cutting in and tapping these goals in. He's whipping these goals in from outside the box and swinging them around the keeper, which is just absolutely beautiful to see. Something as well that I don't think gets talked about enough is the fact that we've a winger that's really, really rapid, and he's also 6'4". He is a nightmare for a ball over the top for a fullback. He is an absolute terror, because every fullback is about 6-7 inches shorter than him. At the game against Man City, the whole time it was launch the ball to Gakpo, put him on Kyle Walker, launch the ball to Gakpo. And because Kyle Walker didn't have his unlimited pace that he usually has, now he's in no man's land, getting swanned out of it by a giant stood beside him. And it was beautiful to see. And it's just great to see, as you mentioned, Kev, as well. You notice it a lot when Diaz and Núñez and Gakpo kind of play together in that central to left wing sort of mixing position. Núñez and Diaz can move out to the left, and Gakpo can move into the centre, and they can switch. And now all of a sudden you have your right sided centre back and your right back in a complete bind, because they have to defend 2 to 3 different play styles every game, and their heads spinning. And it's brilliant, because having that versatility, as you said, is absolutely vital for that front line. Dan, now I'm going to call you out a little bit here, because you were, and very staunchly so, in the camp of Claire Balding earlier this summer. And you were one of those that were begging for Claire Balding to arrive at this club and take over that left wing position. And I think I'm not sure if myself and yourself had arguments. I'm pretty sure myself and Carter had a lot of arguments stating that he's basically a blonde Luis Diaz, the way he scores his goals. And that's kind of been shown through this season, because he's not really shown the same levels as he did last season, and it seems to be Isak robbing all the goals off him. And if he came to us, Gakpo would be taking them, Diaz would be taking them, Salah would be taking the goals away from him, and he also would be on penalties. However, for those who don't know who we're talking about Anthony Gordon, who looks like Claire Balding.
Stunning.
But it's like a young Burt Reynolds. But with how Luis Diaz started the season, and with how Cody Gakpo has kind of taken that torch and ran with the remainder of the season, who argues with Carter? Oh, you only see the public side of Carter. Oh my God, that has to be. I'm saying that comment. I'll put that in the chat later on. The Amuse Carter. Do you know what I'm going to actually do? I'm going to read you out the list of left wingers Carter believes is better than Cody Gakpo, and this is a long list. Where are we? Okay, so this is the list of wingers that Carter would rather have over Cody Gakpo. Jeremy Doku, Jadon Sancho, Jack Grealish, Hudson-Odoi, Rashford, Garnacho, Gordon, Eze, Gibbs-White, Cunha, Odebert. Apparently a very close and better fit for us. Son, I could see that in his prime, not now. Matoma, Linga, Kudos, Sterling, Martinelli, Kwon Hee-chan,
Sterling?
Barnes, Jack Clark, and Emile Smith-Rowe. That's all the wingers that Carter would have over
Sterling.
Yes, Sterling. Grealish, who hasn't scored in over a year and got given a
Carter's got a time machine, hasn't he? He must think he can bring players back from the points when they were really good. Like, yeah, I'll have Sterling back from 2015 if you wouldn't mind. I could just pick him up, not the one we got now, or Rashford when he's having a good season. Yeah, come on, fella, come on, let's be sensible.
I couldn't get over it. He gave us that list, and I was like, nah.
Right. Stephen, I need to answer my allegations on Cody Gakpo,
Yes.
but I still have some evidence that needs to be provided, and I'll never allow people to rewrite history just because of what's happening right now. Cody Gakpo got off to a slow start this season. He did. It took him 10 games to score a Premier League goal. That's the truth of it. It took him 10 games to get a Premier League goal. It also took him 6 games to do full 90. He didn't have a blinder, let's be honest with you, when he played in the Forest game, when he should have just hacked down that lad. He should have just tackled him, given a yellow card away. But ever since then, he's massively improved. He's the player who has massively improved. He's a player whose output has started to match the player that we have. And this is something I'll always say about any player. You can prove me wrong. Last season, I was absolutely correct in saying sell him and Luis Diaz based on you do not deliver enough as a Liverpool player. You were not delivering enough. And at times, Jamie Carragher's words worked brilliantly when he sat there and said he looks like he's the player who plays the game in slow motion. We will all remember the disaster class substitution when he came on against United. It was shocking. He is a completely different player now, Cody Gakpo. He is brilliant. I'm really, really impressed with the way that he's taken to his game, and he seems to be a player who rather than face the difficulties and that he had last season, he did score goals, but the Europa League stuff, I can't give it credence. I can't sit there and say, oh yeah, look at all these goals that he scored against Sparta Prague. It's not the level. It's not what I'm talking about. You can take away all of those ones and give me 2 more in the Premier League, and I would have been happier. That's where it matters. The Europa League was a nice little bonus. But same with Luis Diaz. Now, something that Slot has done brilliantly. Again, somebody else that I was critical of initially when we first were looking for him, because I felt like it was such a big step up. But once reading about what he's done exactly what he's done in every club that he's been at. He makes players better. He's made almost everybody in this club is better than they were last season. It's absolutely marked, and something that he has improved on is obviously finishing, putting players in the right positions, for God's sakes. Cody Gakpo, a player who said in an interview, my best position's on the left, and we for some reason we just didn't play him there. We just went, Luis Diaz plays there, and Cody Gakpo, you get to play in the 8. And it's like, this isn't where we're playing. We started to believe sort of, oh, he's like Firmino. He's like he can play everywhere. He can play a false 9. He can do this and he can do that. And he's like, no, he can't. He actually can't do that. And I think Kev hit the nail on the head. He's really good at doing one shot. We see that one and we go, he's really good at making space and hitting it dead hard with his right foot into that right-hand corner. That's what he's really good at. And if you put Cody Gakpo in those positions, he seems to be, when he's full of that confidence, to score the goals. So I'm dead impressed with what he's been able to deliver, and especially for the price tag. I'd like to see some more rotation with Luis Diaz on that left-hand side, though. I still think Luis Diaz has a lot to offer when it comes to being a left winger. He gives us something different. I think we saw it against Lille. I felt like he gives us a little bit more guile, a little bit more kind of... We forget Luis Diaz is a false 9. It can work, but at times it frustrates the life out of me. And I feel that we do need to obviously be looking at a proper 9, but who knows what the future holds. I think this is what's exciting and mysterious and kind of almost frightening about what the future holds when certain players aren't here. What is it that we're going to do? Who's going to be the tip of the spear come August next season? But Cody Gakpo, fantastic, brilliant. He's proven me wrong, and so is Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz, on the other hand, has gone through another similar phase where he's involved in the games, but he's not affecting them quite as well as you would like. The goals and the assists have dried up a little bit, but he's still working really hard. And as long as everybody else is pulling the weight, it's okay. If his job is to work hard, his job is to create space, I'm comfortable with that. But it's only when, of course, the other players aren't able to get those goals is when it becomes a real problem. But at the moment, fantastic. Couldn't be happy with them, and we want to see that happen against Bournemouth for the weekend.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is that Slot has kind of, if you look at how he played with Feyenoord and you look at how he plays with us, it's completely flipped in regards to the attacking prowess. With Feyenoord, he had Jimenez as his number 9 that was just banging goals for fun, and he had his wingers as the creators and the space eaters and the guys that ran with the ball and created with the ball. Now it seems to have flipped, because now all of a sudden his wingers are the scorers and assisters, and the central players are the workhorses, the pressers, and the guys who also help create as well. Obviously with Szoboszlai and Nunes, just they run for days and they'll press the life out of you and infuriate the life out of you. Then you have the likes of Harvey Elliott that will come in and just slice a pass straight through, which is brilliant to have. And then also you have the versatility of Gakpo and Diaz flipping on the left-hand side there, where you're dealing with two different profiles in the one game, and it's hard enough to deal with one. And something that I think isn't really going, or is flying under the radar rather, is Gakpo's chance creation. Because even if he's not getting in on his right, he's able to swing it across with his left, and he's created a lot of opportunities that way. He's creating and scoring, which is all you could really ask for from a left winger. And he's also pressing and winning the ball back an awful lot in the final third. Stu, with Gakpo, I know I've asked Kev this already, like, are you shocked with that? But I think he's after breaking a record for most home games in a row to have scored for Liverpool with 7. That is a level of consistency that we have not had in the squad essentially since the big three were disbanded, shall we call it that, with Bobby and Mane leaving. Obviously, Salah was the main guy. He was the powerhouse going forward. And obviously, as Kev mentioned, he was played out of position an awful lot last season. Gakpo, that is. He played the 9, which he shouldn't have. He played as an 8. He played maybe once or twice left wing last season, and he looked electric. And then never played there again.
Yeah.
Which, to a degree, is down to coaching and how they want it. And I think that was a Pep Lijnders decision, because you could see in the latter 2 or 3 years after Klopp got given the sort of GM role, Pep Lijnders' management and coaching came in, and it didn't necessarily. You could see things they were putting square pegs into round holes, and it wasn't necessarily working as well as it should have. Now you play him in his right position, or his natural position, which is the left wing, and all of a sudden he's one of the best left wingers in the world. Like, are you really surprised with this, knowing what he was like with PSV before arriving to Liverpool, or do you think he's just a versatile inside forward that's playing either side of the channel that he's comfortable with, if that makes sense?
No, I mean, am I surprised that a natural left inside forward is playing in his natural inside forward left side position and he's doing well? No, I'm not surprised at all, because he's a cracking player. I knew he was a good player at PSV. Didn't know too much about him until he came to us. And like you say, like Diaz when he came the January before, wasn't it? Diaz came the January before Gakpo, wasn't it? Hit the ground running, absolutely electric for that part. But again, as has been alluded to last season, he got moved around the pitch way too much. And it never really made any sense for me why they kept on playing him out of position. As you say, I think Lijnders did some work in the background there where he thought he could probably mold him into, I don't know, maybe a Firmino style player. It's not his style. It's like you say, he's got the pace and he's got the build, and that's what I wanted to pick up on more than anything with Gakpo, is that I think what puts people off him, I don't know whether this is just me, we all have certain physical images of what players should look like.
Yeah, you don't expect a big, gangly 6'4" winger to be outpacing you down the wing.
I don't expect the giraffe on the left wing to be running past a fullback, but that's what we've got. He looks unnatural in that position because of his physicality. Just out of thinking of like sort of wingers from the 80s and the 90s and the noughties who were shorter and pacier, a lot more like Salah were. But fair play to him. He's having an absolutely blinding season. I ain't got a bad word to say about him. And as long as he keeps on going with it, more the merrier. Bring it on. It's great to see. And I'm really, really pleased for him, to be fair, because he did have a rough patch last season. There were some doubters, myself included. I wasn't entirely sure whether it was going to work out. But like Dan said before as well, Slot is one of those managers that is a man manager and gets the best out of his players. And that is exactly what he is doing with Gakpo. Lo and behold, in his natural position. Who'd have thought?
Yeah. I think he's he's a different man manager to what Klopp was. I think Slot is a man manager that gets the best out of the players through the tactics, whereas Klopp is a man manager that gets the best out of the players through motivation. And both are very, very important, but I think the tactical side of it is a bit better, purely because the emotions will only drag you so far. Unfortunately, we've seen that so many times with us.
You can really tell they've worked with him though. You can see that it's been a growing thing. You know, he didn't start like a steam train. It's something that they've brought into him, and whether it's not, someone's just had to say to him, "You're massive and really good, so use that." And it's like he started to believe, and he's obviously the king of the EFL Cup because he just seems to win the Golden Boot and that all the time. But it's sort of like just do this, and it's just coming to him, and like if he can continue it on at the rate he's going, I mean, 35 million euros, what a bargain!
Absolute bargain. We are probably going to finish it there, guys, because we're coming up close on the hour at the moment. Oh no! Do you want me to rip on the Frenchman? Sound, we're going to rip on the Frenchman, froggy cunt. But we might as well rip on the Frenchman. We've got 5 minutes left because he's a tit and I don't like him. And I'm absolutely delighted that Kate Abdo got married in front of him and he cried tears, the little bitch.
Tell us how you really feel, Stephen. Come on.
Oh, if I did, we'd be banned. If I
Tell us how you really
out
feel.
The swear words and slurs that I want to call Theirry Henry, we wouldn't be allowed on this channel again. I'm telling you now. But before we get into this absolute mess fest of player comparison,
I didn't think it was handball.
Yeah, that's good. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out. We'll go briefly on this because if I get into this and I get into my bag on this, I'm probably going to have an aneurysm. But Salah versus Henry shouldn't even be a question anymore. Just look at the numbers and no arguments. Well, when you do look at the numbers, Salah currently has more Premier League goals than Theirry Henry by one. He's on 176. Theirry Henry is 175. He also has the same amount of. He's one less Premier League. He's more carling. He's more EFL Cups. He's one less FA Cup. But he also has a European Super Cup. I think he's a Club World Cup as well. Salah does, and importantly, Salah has more Champions Leagues than Henry has at Arsenal. Now, if Salah goes on and wins a Premier League this season, he's matched him for Premier Leagues, has more Champions Leagues, and I think they outweigh the others quite drastically in regards to that. When it comes to Theirry Henry, maybe obviously some of us, I think all of us here watched him. There's nobody here that's too young to have not watched him. Theirry Henry was an absolutely fantastic footballer, despite the cunt that he is. And he obviously was the best player on that Arsenal team for many, many, many years, and was the first sort of prototypical winger that came into the league that played like that, if that makes sense. And Kev, please make sure to correct me if I'm wrong on that, because he's the earliest one that I can kind of remember. I'm sure there was probably others before him that were maybe ahead of their time, but how Henry played, it was electric. He was rapid. The pace that he had was brilliant. But Salah, for me, just takes it. It just sheer consistency over years, sheer consistency in multiple competitions. He's in the top 10 all time for Champions League goal scorer. He's ahead of him now in the Premier League goal scoring tally. Salah has, I mean, at this point, only Mo Salah can be better than Mo Salah is probably the best way you could put it. Dan, how would you view the comparison? And do you feel that Salah still has a little bit to go to maybe surpass Henry, or maybe a crutch that's being used is it took Salah longer to get the same numbers that Henry had in less games?
It all depends on what you're basing it on, isn't it? I know people can talk about the numbers, and they are important, of course they are, but it's a difficult situation to compare the two. I mean, the importance of the player. If Mo Salah has fired Liverpool to titles, he's fired us towards trophies, he's fired us towards the Champions Leagues. He's been, an incredible tool within a football team. However, I don't know. It's really difficult. Henry for talent, Henry for his play style, Henry for the way that that things were done. There's also an element of nostalgia that a lot of people can't get over because it's a case if that was your first love and no one will get over that. I wanted to be Theirry Henry when I was 14 years of age. I wanted to score the goals like he did. For me, Salah for me, I believe is still our greatest Premier. I believe he's now our greatest Premier League player. If we win another title, when we win the next title, by the way, should I say, then I think there's a few arguments that get settled. If you've won 2 Premier Leagues, Champions League, the FA Cup, the Super Cup, the Club World Cup, all that great stuff in one football team, you have to be in that conversation as one of the greatest players to have played. And I'm just looking at the list there of goal scorers, by the way, must be listening to us. We've got Mo Salah, who by the end of this season is going above Frank Lampard. If he extends his contract, it's all by 2 years, every potential he could end up third above Rooney, and that's not beyond the realms of possibility. 100, yeah. If he sees it in the sights, trust me, he'll do it. He will get there. That's the thing. He's on 176 goals, and he's 30 goals away from going above. 40 goals, 2 seasons. It'd be light work for that for Mo Salah. I think that's a fact. I think he'd have a look at that and say, that's on the cards. And of course, that would kill any possible argument. If even whether or not you can say he stayed longer and he's done all this good stuff, but there's a difference in the play styles and a difference where they were. Theirry Henry was almost he was a striker at times. He was the tip of the spear for an Arsenal team who played in a different era as well. Football was different back then, so. We can get carried away and caught up and say football was better. Some of it, but football was different. It was very different. I remember I watched one of those Premier League years, and it was between Chelsea and Arsenal, and the standard of football was absolutely shocking. The ball didn't stay on the floor for anything longer than 3 or 4 passes, and then it was lumped up, and then I think I saw 7 headers, one after the other. It was ridiculous.
And Kev, how do you view it? Obviously, the politest way I could put this is that you would have a more encyclopedic knowledge of players past and present than most others. Is probably the nicest way I could put it, which is trying to be a compliment about it. But given the players that you would have seen, the likes of Dalglish, the likes of John Barnes, the likes of Ian Rush and all of them guys and everybody that kind of came through there, and then seeing Owen and then seeing Gerrard like the rest of us did, and seeing Suarez and seeing everybody that's come through, there is a library of great players that were there, along with the great players that came from other teams. You obviously had your Henrys, you had your Rooneys, you had your Ronaldos when he was here, you had your Frank Lampards, you had all of those guys as well. The Shearer as well is another one that was around, especially back when he was playing with Blackburn Rovers too. How do you view this debate? Do you think it's an equal pairing, or do you think Salah has still a bit to go? Because as Dan mentioned, when we win the Premier League at the end of the season, because I think we will, all of a sudden we could win a Champions League at the end of the season as well. And he's now matched him for Premier Leagues and doubled his Champions Leagues. And then you're kind of looking at the accolades, but then how long it took him to get there, and you kind of weigh up the two. How do you view
it? The way I see it is when I saw Henry's one of the best I've seen. I've never seen a player as fast as what he was. And that game where he does Carragher, I was at that game on that side, and I was amazed how quick and versatile Henry was. Henry came as a winger and was converted into a striker. That's what happened to Henry. Henry was the winning player for Arsenal all the time. His pace, and to have Bergkamp just behind him as well, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League ever. I love watching Bergkamp play. The only downside to Bergkamp was he didn't like travelling by plane, so the
non-flying Dutchman.
Yeah. So, but for Henry, the best way to sum this up, because it's all down to opinions, and people have different opinions, and will bring certain things into it. To have a player of Mo Salah and have the capability within 8 years to put himself in a conversation alongside Thierry Henry is probably the best way to sum up how good Mo Salah has been. He has put himself into this conversation, and if he extends, then that conversation is for this generation to talk about, because it will be a generational thing. Henry, for me, I think just slightly gets it at the minute, but that can change, and that will change in the next year or two. The other thing you got to remember is Henry got 175 goals at Arsenal. Mo Salah has only got 174 at Liverpool. So out of those 176, until he gets on that, then that wipes that little top trumps little thing out as soon as he starts scoring, right? But for me, to put yourself into that kind of conversation, I don't think anyone thought that was possible. And I agree with what Dan says. If he extends and he goes, he could go quite high up. I think he gets to third, maybe second. If, depending on his longevity, and he sees that Wayne Rooney one, then it's already been mentioned on the overlap. And there was a shock when they came out when he's the best right-hander player to play in the Premier League. He's already got that accolade already. So then have this as well. That's a conversation for everyone else to argue over. But for me, at the minute, he's on course to be better than Henry at the minute. But what Henry done and being part of that unbeaten team for Arsenal kind of stands out for me. And he was an actual, to take over that Ian Wright's goals that he got. Phenomenal play, and it was a variety of his goals as well, not just sheer pace. The audacity against the United at Harvey, where he just whacks it over his head nonchalantly into the top bin. He had that in his locker. Not saying that Mo hasn't. Mo scored his boss goals for us, but for me at the minute, Henry slightly, but that changes with as you say, a league and hopefully a European Cup at the end of the season.
Yeah, and if you think about it as well, as Dan mentioned, if he signs for another 2 years, now all of a sudden you have 2.5 years, because we're still only halfway through this current season. He could very easily, I think, what's he on at the minute? He's just behind the likes of Lampard, the likes of Aguero, the likes of Rooney. I can't remember who else is there, but I could very easily see
Andy
him.
Cole.
If he's here for, Andy Cole as well. If he's here for another 2 years,
top five this season. Easy.
If he's here for another 2 years, I think he beats Harry Kane. Genuinely. If you think about it, he's on 176 in the Premier League minute. He needs.
Well, if he scores 12, he goes above Andy Cole.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not beyond the realms of possibility with Mo Salah. I know it's a thing, but it's not beyond the realms that if he scores 8 goals, 3 penalties, you know what I mean? He could exactly. This is the thing for Salah. He has the potential to go fourth this season, and that's not beyond the realms of possibility for a player of his ability. So, I don't know. It's just difficult. I think Kev's just nailed it there. It's it's for each sort of group's generation. It's difficult to argue with that one's previous generation, because people will sit there and go, when before Henry, there'd have been another person saying, well, what about him? Joe, what about this guy? Because how's he gone above this one? And it's about how they influence football, and Mo Salah's influenced football.
Exactly that. Henry was my teenage era. So it's when I was growing up, when I was really heavily getting into football down the park with my mates, playing footy constantly. And that's when Arsenal and United were going toe-to-toe, and they had Henry in that side. And he was phenomenal, but he was part of that generation. Now, you can compare stats and all that sort of stuff. And Salah, quite rightly, is being talked about being above Henry because of the stats and what he has won, and potentially going to win this season. I agree. I think we are going to win league title. I'll really see me arse if we don't. European title, potentially as well. I think we're on very, very good form for that. But Henry for that generation is for that generation. Salah is for this generation. And I think that's just all going to be the way it is, always with football. You're always going to be comparing players. But at the end of the day, those players stick into that generation of football, and football evolves over the time. And Salah is part of this generation. You can't take that away from him. He's just a phenomenal player. Imagine both of them in the same side.
Oh, jeez. See, I think if you had both of them in the same side, I don't think it'd work because they're too ball dominant, which means one would hinder the other. That's why having somebody, it's like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. You can't have two Michael Jordans. You can't have Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant on the same team.
True.
They're too ball dominant because they need the ball to produce their magic. And if you have two of those guys on the team, they hurt each other. You need one guy and then you need a rear gunner. You need Batman and you need Robin. Salah, Mane, and Bobby Firmino were the Batman and Robin sort of trio. If one was stepping up, the other two played backup and rear gunner. If two were stepping up, the third guy played rear gunner, so on and so forth, and that kind of way. And that's kind of how it's worked this season as well. Salah is Batman. Cody Gakpo and Luis Diaz are your Robin, so to speak, this season so far. But, guys, we are going to leave it there. We went a little bit over time, but we did need to talk about that French frog and how absolutely shite he is. But anyways, as I said, France is a beautiful country, just a shame about the French people. And it's only there so that you can drive to nicer countries like Spain, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. But thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos as well so that you never miss out. We will be live again tomorrow from 7:30 p.m. UK time for our pre-game stream before Liverpool travel to play PSV, Gakpo's old team, in the final match, which I would assume to be a bit of a rubber match because we've top two secured. And Jamie is no. I will be taking that grudge to the grave. However, thank you guys so much for joining us on this Monday evening. We will see you guys again tomorrow. Bye-bye.